Okay, we're here with Lynn Carden, otherwise known as Happy Daze Poet. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your poetry, and how you came into poetry?
Yeah, I came into poetry as a child. We always had a big book of nursery rhymes. I'm the youngest of 11 children, and it was always a household item. So that was my first exposure to any kind of poetry or rhyming, played with words. When I was a teenager, in the 70s, they had a famous poster. I think the name of it's Deserata. Anyway, it's very popular. I went and bought it and put it in my room, and that's when I began my adventure of emotions on paper. So that's where it really all started, was from there on. And I wrote my first poem when I was 13. It's called Lock Love Up, which I do have it in one of my books. So.
Okay. Why are you a poet?
It was just a gift. I really didn't ask for it. I don't know any other way of living. I don't know what else to do with time other than to take experiences, myself or others, conversations, words, and develop in a story or an adventure, feeling on paper, and it just comes to me.
Okay. Throughout your poetry career, throughout your writing career, have there been any influences that have been along with you, any kind of mentors or teachers?
Well, I think it really started, my mother always had cute little quotes. She never raised her voice, but she always had some kind of like little cute saying, and always thought that was neat. She always had a certain way of saying things that really captivated your attention, and you listened. So it kind of started there, the way she handled herself. Of course, music was a big influence. Natalie Merchant, Carole King, Jim Morrison, Bob Dylan, all of those people, listening to their music, even Leon Russell, they were all good songwriters, poets. So.
Okay, let's talk about your publication history for a little bit. You've got some books here lined up, and so just talk about your publication history. Have you been in any kind of literary journals? And then tell us a little bit about the books here.
Well, the books here, the first chapbook I put out was called Another Life Alone, and it's all about death-related subject. This is Iridescent Love, which is self-explanatory. Breaking with kids, any kind of separation or single parenting. And this one here, Children Near and Far, is all about children. Mm-hmm. However you're close to them.
Okay. And so how did these come about? Were they just planned? Did you just sort of fall into them?
Actually, I had a beginning book from the time I was 13 to 19. I had a collection of poems that I had accumulated and put together. I wanted to get it published. At that time, there wasn't a lot of activity on the internet, and so I didn't have a lot of exposure or a lot of knowledge about how to go about doing it. So I carried it around in the trunk. It got stolen. So I don't have a lot of the original poems from back then. I do have a few that I salvaged through the years because they were in my school newspaper, or my mother had a copy and when she passed away it came back to me, things like that. But how it came about was actually my nephew, which is very creative in the music industry. He approached me and wanted to do some artwork, and he wanted my first book to be the collection of death poems. A lot of them are personal to my family, and that's why he wanted to put the artwork to it. I'd never thought about putting little books together, but so that's really how the seed got planted, and I just kind of went with it. His mother, which is my sister, my eldest sister, Jaquita, is kind enough to put them together for me. It's a lot of work on her, a lot of work on me. But we're getting it. I've got 4 done. I've got about 6 more that I'm hoping to get out in 2014. So hopefully that'll happen. We're working.
Very active, very active.
Yes.
So aside from getting the books out there, how else do you get your work out there? How do you get known in the Houston poetry community?
Attend poetry readings. That's the best way to do it. I read anywhere and everywhere for friends, family. So that's the main thing.
Okay. When you do readings, is there like a specific poem that they like to hear? Is there something that you do personally at each reading? Any kind of requests?
Well, I can do it that way, but I tend to be very spontaneous. I think it's very much spontaneous for me because it's hard for me to plan at that moment when I walk in the room how it's going to feel, how I'm going to be affected by the people. So I kind of just tend to bring a little collection or have several on my phone, and I just kind of randomly pick them and go with it.
Okay. Have you ever thought of trying to take any of these to an actual small press publisher? Any kind of...
Oh, I'd love to.
I'd love to.
I would love someone to just say, okay, you get it together and we're going to do this. I would love that because it's not cheap to publish, and I don't have that kind of income, so it would be out of the question for me to ever have anything called worthwhile, but not impossible. Mm-hmm. You know, things do happen, miracles happen. So.
Okay, let's go on ahead and define poetry. What is poetry to you?
Emotions on paper.
Emotions on paper. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Condensing stories.
Okay. There are several articles out there that say that poetry is dead, that we as poets aren't around anymore, that we're sort of asleep. Is that a fair statement to make? Do you think poetry is dead?
Oh, no. It's very much alive. Very much alive.
In America, there's a lot of negative attitudes towards poetry. In fact, poetry sort of has this feeling of elitism around it. Do you think, why would you think that there would be kind of negative attitudes to poetry, or do you think that there's negative attitudes towards poetry?
I don't see that.
No.
I don't see that in my circle of life. But I tend to keep the people around me and friends and acquaintances very much involved. I have several requests monthly, situations going on in families, and they'll hit me up on Facebook. Hey, Happy, could you please write a poem about this? And I'm really feeling this, or I'm concerned about my daughter, or my daughter's having this, or my husband's treating me this way. So I have a lot of requests, and you can't get any better people involved than to know that they can go somewhere and say, I'm having a situation, could you write me a poem about it? And to produce one and gift it back to them, it involves them, and people need to be reached on that level in order to stay interested and in order to participate.
On that note, reaching people, there was a journalist that just came out and said that poets today aren't really reaching people. We're all just speaking to each other as poets, that we're not getting people involved. Is that a fair statement to make? Should we be working to get more people involved, or are we working enough?
Well, I think it comes back to the individual poets. I do a lot of networking on Facebook, as silly as that sounds. But one of the things I do is challenge writing, and I'll ask my friends to give me some words, and I take the words, write them down, and then I tag the people back on Facebook when I get the poem ready, and I collect all the words on that post, whether it's 5 or 18. I make one point using every word that was given to me, and put it back on their face. So they are actually participating. And then what better way to feel good? Hey, I gave her that word, and that cool, she used it in this poem she wrote. So they get really excited. People really get excited. But that's within my realm, and that works. That works, getting people involved.
Okay. It's really no secret that poetry isn't mainstream. It's not something that you'll find at Barnes and Noble selling millions of copies. The average poetry book maybe sells about 200 copies, and that's really if you're networking it and if you've got a big background. So does the market have an influence on poetry and how people view poetry today?
Probably, yeah. I think that the publishing companies go after what they think is going to sell, which is mostly a lot of fact-based stories, real-life stories, or sci-fi, or whatever category they go for. And, it's up to them to pick and choose what they want. But poetry is everywhere. I mean, it's all over the internet. It's everywhere in your face. Every billboard sign, every advertisement in a store, everywhere there is poetry or poetic lines, clever sayings, jingles. So it's everywhere. But as far as making money on it,
Is poetry something we should be making money on, or should we be happy just as writing words and getting emotions out?
Geez, when I was a teenager, I had thought to myself, one day a publishing company is going to come to me and they're going to say, you know what, you're a good writer. We're going to put you out here on the side of this mountain, set you up in this beautiful atmosphere, and all you have to do is write poetry, take pictures, and we're going to publish your books, and you're going to just sit and write and enjoy life. And as a teenager, that was a dream. It was a possible dream. Now, no, I know that's never going to happen. What happened? I don't know. Real life TV, internet's easy. People get so many services and so many things on the internet for free. They just don't want to purchase a lot of stuff anymore. I've often thought greeting cards would be the great way to go. They still have them in stores, but they don't sell like they used to either. So.
Okay, let's talk about the internet for a moment. The internet is easily accessible. Even in this building here, I'm on an iPad. I have the internet going. I can look at Facebook or do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Since it's so easily accessible, anyone and everyone can post their work on a blog for free. It's free networking, basically. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's watered down poetry at all since it's so easily accessible, or is poetry still strong and going?
No, I think a lot of people like poetry. I think it's very much in demand. Maybe the public readings we go to doesn't say that, but it is. It really is.
So would the internet be very beneficial to poetry then?
Oh yeah, you could touch a lot of lives with that.
Okay. Poetry's had some very historical moments. I mean, years ago, Ginsberg would go out to political rallies, and they would rally against very hot-button issues. Today, it's not, like, we don't see that often today. Have you experienced any poets going out and rallying against hot-button issues?
No.
If I were to ask you if you knew any, would you be able to give any names?
No.
Should we, are poets asleep to hot-button issues?
I'm not a real political person, so I might not be the right one to ask. But, I mean, I just recently, just a couple of days ago, wrote a poem on emancipation because Juneteenth is coming up. So it's kind of a current event thing. So I do, it's each poet.
Each poet, okay. There's an article that says you can tell a medium is still vital by posing this question: can it change anything? Does poetry have the power to change anything?
Yeah, I think it changes lives all the time.
let's talk events. We had the Austin International Poetry Festival come up just this past April. We have Houston's Poetry Festival coming up in October. There's several readings going on. It was said recently in another interview that these events are great. They're great for networking, but it's not great. It's not reaching as many people as it ought to be reaching. It's reaching more poets as opposed to the general public. Do you think that's a fair statement to make?
Yes.
Is there ways we could network these events for general public?
Well, I don't know how it would happen, but yeah, we should be able to. I think a lot of the poetry festivals seem to be just that, poetry readings. I think if they had it maybe more on a park level or street level where people could be in a festive atmosphere, and also include some other vendors, music or something, and then have poetry in there with it, I think we could reach a lot more people.
Okay. As a poet, what is your message to younger voices, to younger people who are trying to get into the poetry world?
Write and read. Just do it. Don't stop doing it. Even if it's ever you just feel like it's for yourself, that's a good enough reason to do it. The legacy will continue. There are historical memoirs that people wrote at bedside every night that are priceless. And words on paper will always be priceless. If not your living time, the generations that are going to follow you. Because we can see so much that is written about and how times have changed. So even in my lifetime, I wrote poems about teenage years that they're funny to hear now because things are so different.
So you've brought a couple things that you'd like to read. Can you tell us a little bit about the items that you're going to be reading?
I brought 3 poems. What would you like to hear first? I have one named Serendipity, one named Silence, and one named Dark Side Love.
They all sound wonderful. Very hard to choose. Let's go for the middle one. Let's do Silence.
Okay. Silence is pretty self-explanatory when I start reading it. I hope I don't get too loud in here. Silence. I stand before you. Silence. Your mind has too much to do. Silence. Let it grow. Silence. Captivating, Silence. Before creation. Silence in all nations. Silence, our king has won. Silence, he used no gun. Silence, now I am done.
Wonderful. Okay.
That's probably one of crowd-pleasing favorites. I get well receptive on that one. We'll do this one, Serendipity. This is a poem I had wrote asking my friends on Facebook for words, and this tells the story about how that happens. Serendipity. I ask for a challenge from time to time, you see. What happens with the words is serendipity. My friends give me words to write like I do. No mercy on me. I ask for one, sometimes I get 33. Contemporary writing is what I poetically do, letting words flow and a rhyme at times too. Spectacular words are really too few, like a breath of sunshine creating memories for you. No tickets to Paris, ecstatic as that seems, just the serenity of words I desire to write dreams. So life is simple on my porch as I do, creating a poem with a rhyme or two. Remember, my friends, this I do for you. And the last one is Dark Side Love. This was written about an ex-boyfriend. Oh, my dark side, where'd you go? I long for your embrace, the sensual way you remove my lace, your strong leather straps and muscular chest. Just what I need here now, but here alone with so much less. Closing my lashes and holding them tight. I want you here, I'm thirsting for you tonight. Mouth watering, my body enters pulse, my begging veins reaching through my skin. Oh, my dark side, where'd you go? On this body aching night, I need you so.
And that was Lynn Carden, otherwise known as Happy Daze Poet. Before we leave, I do want to get a couple information out for our viewers. Where can they purchase your books if they're interested in purchasing them?
Through me, on Happy Daze Poet, Facebook, or at a poetry reading. Anywhere in Harris County, Galveston County. When I get to Austin, I'm there sometimes. But usually people just private message on Facebook. Happy Daze, D-A-Z-E, Poet.
That's all one word on Facebook?
No, three.
Three.
First, middle, and last.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to sit down with us. This has been really great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Bye, everybody.